pjnet.tv. It is 9 o'clock on the East Coast, and we're starting a brand new week with a first-time guest who is standing by in our green room, and she is going to tell us about a lot of things, including freedom. You'll want to know more, and we are streaming and recording. We are ready to count it down to Studio 8, starting now. Well, good evening. Welcome. This is pjnet.tv. I'm your host, Coach Prasick. It's starting a brand new week on this, the 20th day of June already. And it's always a pleasure to introduce a first-time guest, and you will be inspired and enthused, and you will be on your way to freedom after hearing her. And her name is... my mouse is acting a little peculiar tonight, folks. I'm going to bring her on the screen. You know how if your mouse gets jumpy, you know what I'm talking about? Maria Wingard joins us from the great state of Ohio. And Maria, you recently...
Hello, Coach. How are you?
I couldn't be better. I wish you would send some of your cooler weather our way. And you recently attended the folks, you're going to see that blink from time to time. There's a bad internet connection, or depending on the weather, maybe the weather will clear up, but we've got this down. There's so much we're going to talk about, but it all started, for this anyway, you were attending a writers conference, Blue Ridge Mountain Christian Writers Conference, and you ran into, well, you always run into a lot of people there, but one of the ones you ran into was Diane Cuneo from vinewords.net. How long have you known Diane?
That's correct. A couple years now. I met her through Stephanie, and I actually endorsed Diane's book. I had the pleasure of getting to read that before it came out into print. And she had invited me to the Writers Conference. She's been encouraging me to take it to the next level on that, as has Stephanie. And so that's how I ended up at my very first Writers Conference.
What was your thoughts?
I loved it. I've been to different conferences, but for my first time at a writers conference, first time at a Christian writers conference, I loved the camaraderie where everybody just really was cheering everyone else along. I love that everybody truly embraced there's enough to go around, and that we all have a market, and that we can celebrate each other, and it doesn't take something away from me. I really sense that belief that divine appointments are important, and that we will all meet the connections that we're supposed to and end up doing what God has called us to. So to meet so many people that embrace that mindset when that's how I function was a blessing to me. I really, really enjoyed it. I loved all the speakers. I obviously couldn't hear everybody, but anyone that I was able to sit under was top-notch quality. I loved the keynotes. I thought they did an amazing job. Got to meet tons of phenomenal people that are well-rounded, tremendously gifted, and wanting to use their gifts for God. So for me, that was a blessing.
After attending a Christian Writers Conference, that was one of my takeaways. I'm not a writer, but my takeaway was similar to yours, is they don't seem to be in competition. They seem to be just part of a family.
Right. And healthy competition. I mean, obviously they want to win. I mean, if they're signed up for, to try and win the SELA award, obviously they want to win, but it's a healthy competition, because I've played sports my entire life, and there's a difference between healthy competition and cutthroat. And I didn't sense that cutthroat competition. I sensed the healthy, we're all friends, we're family, and we're all playing for the same team. And yes, we want to win, but if we don't, we know that one of our families winning. So that was a tremendous blessing.
And you come into that conference with primarily, well, several experiences, but let's talk about your speaking experience and coaching experience, because, I'm a coach too. And to motivate people, you've got to tell them, or not got to, but the message is this. You got to get off your butt. Somebody's going to eat your lunch and you're watching the parade go by. You got to get in the game and compete. And this is not the same mindset that you experience at a Christian Writers Conference. But tell us about your professional work in terms of speaking and in terms of coaching.
Sure. I was in finance for 17 years before I retired and became a full-time, I call it a missionary to the United States. I believe that I'm called here to this nation to serve these people, which is a nation of all nations. And I believe in freedom and that we need to set people free, the captives free. So I travel to different churches, speak and minister at different women's conferences, different churches. I've spoken Sunday mornings and stuff like that, on a variety of topics. But I come from a background of finance. So I really started doing financial coaching, of getting people out of debt, helping them dig out of that pit that debt holds them in. And what I came to find out is, as I was coaching them in financial freedom, marriage coaching and family, different things along those lines, to really help them embrace whole life living in Christ, that through Christ, a freedom in all areas of life, not just financially. And really, the finances being a mess was a symptom of their lives being a mess.
Well put. I think that there's this culture in Christianity, and I think it's well intentioned. I think it's rooted in the doctrine of humility. I believe that God has not called us to live our lives in serial defeat after defeat after defeat. And yet,
I agree with
as
that.
Christians, sometimes we don't want to compete. We feel like that we should just be humble. And after all, we serve a sovereign God. We can pray and He'll take care of everything, right?
Again, I'm going to go to what I said, healthy competition versus cutthroat. I don't believe God has called us into cutthroat competition. I believe that a competition is a good, otherwise He wouldn't have created us this way. He wouldn't create us to have a spirit of excellence in all that we do. That is the spirit of true competition, of healthy competition. I want and all that I do. I want to strive to be the best in my field, to be the best on the field. And that then I really fail. I've just learned that I need to work harder for next time. And that's what I tell people. Failure is not what you failure is to try harder, work harder. I need to sharpen. It's learning where you're deficient, learning what your starting point is for the next time you step on the field, for the next time you book, for the next age your spouse in a conflict. That wasn't a failure. That was your learning tool of how to you step on the field.
I would say that no failure is final, but neither is a victory.
Right.
It's a roller coaster. There are going to be times of victory. There's going to be times of defeat. But the thing is, we have to keep moving. Paul talks about competition in the New Testament. He uses the word strive. And I've always said that, competition, we don't know who we are until we're tested. And competition can bring out the best and worst in people.
I would agree with that. And I feel that when it does bring out the worst, it gives us an opportunity to look in the mirror or to ignore it. I believe in helping people face the mirror and say, okay, that was pretty ugly. So how do I make sure that that doesn't show up next time I'm on the field? how do I make sure the next time I'm in a conversation with my spouse that doesn't happen? There's some circumstances we really don't have control over, and that's part of what really birthed the podcast, the radio show that I just started, which is Bridging Broken to Breakthrough. You can be broken by circumstances in your life and never ever get out of those circumstances, but you can have breakthrough by holding Jesus' hand through those circumstances. My husband and I are contending for breakthrough in a lot of areas, but we have peace in the storm, and that peace is available through Jesus because he's holding our hand. So even if circumstances never change, we have peace. We are content in all circumstances. And when you can learn how to be content in all of your circumstances, you don't have to live in that brokenness anymore. The healing of Jesus enters your life, and you then have freedom. I mean, we read the story in the Bible where he's in jail and he says, I've learned to be content, right? I've learned to be content in all circumstances. Well, how could he say that when he was literally in jail with no knowledge if he's ever going to get out? Through the peace of Christ living inside of him, learning to say, it doesn't matter what's happening to me, it matters who's living inside of me. And that's how you progress from being broken to breakthrough. And we have so many people right now, they're living in the world of self-help. And they're caught in this trap of self-help. And everything is really about self. And the Bible tells us to not be about self, to put self away, to not be focused on ourselves, to be focused on another, and to submit ourselves to the authority of Jesus Christ. And I've found that when you stop focusing on yourself and you start submitting to those in your life, submitting to those around you, loving them like Christ loved the church, submitting to the authority of Jesus Christ, all of a sudden you don't quite need as much self-help as they say you do.
Speaking of breakthroughs, everything was going good. You had your career, doing your speaking engagements and doing your coaching. And then all of a sudden, I will simply describe it as a surge. There's this beautiful logo behind you. You're doing a podcast, you're doing a blog, you've got this website, which I'll put on the screen now, and you're on the radio. What happened?
Well, that actually would have to go a little bit further back. When I married my husband, the Lord told me to quit my job. And this will be vulnerable and transparent. But I found that I had really begun to rely more on myself than I thought I was, even though out of my mouth I was saying, God did this, God's doing this, God's doing this. What I had really started to do was rely on myself, and I was in the top 10% of my company, and I was excellent at my job, and I. And so then when the Lord came to me and he said, I want you to quit your job, I started not breathing. And I went to my fiance at the time thinking he's never going to go for this. And I said, the Lord told me I should quit my job. And he said, well, then you should do this. I said, no, you're supposed to tell me no. And he goes, well, why would I tell you no if the Lord told you to quit your job? And I said, well, because I need to work. So I was disobedient, and the grace lifted. And I started slipping down the ranks. I started really not doing well. And when I say slipping, it wasn't... There's a difference when the grace of God is on your career and when it's not. And when he tells you to do something and you don't listen and that grace lifts, you can tell because you're grinding.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no grace over it anymore. It is work, and it is hard work. And I started dropping, and then I was in the top 15% and then top 20%. That grace was gone. So we get married, go on our honeymoon, and we go to a sister church we did go to Florida.
Thank you.
And we're in Sarasota and at a church of people. And the message was about Elijah and Elisha and burning the plow and not going back. And my husband looked at me. He said, "When are you going to burn your plow?" Is basically what he said. And so I quit my job, and God knew what he was doing. I then entered a health crisis. I was fighting for my life. I ended up it started out with MRSA in my tonsils, which is a very unusual thing to have happen, very unusual location. And so recovered from that, then had a how do you say that? Tonsils out, basically. I had my tonsils out. Then I went into mono. Then I went into toxoplasmosis, which is a very odd diagnosis. But my husband and I went to France for his work, and I ended up getting toxoplasmosis and continued to fight for my life, got better. That was a whole nother story, and we don't have time for that whole story about the whole toxoplasmosis. And then I started ministry when I got through. But it was this whole journey of realizing that I had come to rely on myself and forgot who really was my supply. And God took me through this journey through all of that to rely on him again.
Well, you came out, however difficult it was to come to that point, you came out with both barrels blazing. I know that, you're told at these conferences, you need to, increase your platform. You need to do a blog. You need to do need to do videos. You need to do this. And well, all of a sudden, I mean, man, you did it all. You're blogging, you're doing radio, you're doing a video, you have a YouTube channel you've launched. You went and got a logo designed, and you've got this beautiful ornate, you bought a microphone, for heaven's sakes. I mean, you dive in the deep water. I mean, no kiddie pool for you.
That's correct. That's hilarious that you would use that terminology. When I met my husband, I didn't know if he could quite handle the tornado that he married, so I kicked him in the deep end of the pool. So I don't really believe in doing things halfway. My husband is the caution button I was never born with. I jump from cliffs. I do all the crazy. So yes, it's interesting that you would use that terminology. I definitely do jump off the deep end and all in. I'm all in whatever I do.
Well, that's one way to learn to swim. It's kind of a crash course. Well, gosh, we're out of time. You went to a writing conference, and you haven't mentioned anything about writing. In the couple minutes we have left, tell us about your hopes and dreams and aspirations in terms of writing.
So I've been blogging for a while now. I do enjoy writing. I've always wanted to be a writer since a child. I'm an avid reader, and I am in the process of writing a book. And it has a lot to do with my prayer walking the nation, praying over the different cities that I walk through, praying with the people, praying for unity, praying for people to stop eating the demonic sandwich of Galatians 5, stop with the envy and the strife and the jealousy and the dissension. We have so much dissension, and trying to get people to realize when they eat that and they function in that they don't inherit the kingdom of God. And we're sitting there out of our mouths saying, I want the kingdom of God, but then we're sitting there and participating in the very things that don't allow us to inherit it. So just really praying through those things through the nation and its journey, the people I met, the different interactions, the people I was able to pray for, and lives that have been changed.
Well, folks, there is so much more. I have put the website hopewillarise.com, and there is so much more. But there, we only had 20 minutes, and we've used it. So you can connect with Maria there. And Maria, we are eager to hear about your progress with your book. I hope that when the time comes, that we'll be able to announce that book here on our program. You're welcome back, and we appreciate you so generously sharing of your time, but more importantly, sharing your experiences and your wisdom that you've gained. And we didn't get to talk about prayer walking. Folks, when you come back, we're going to talk about prayer walking. How's that?
Sounds great. Thank you, Coach, for letting me have this opportunity to share with your group of people.
It's been wonderful. Thank you so much. Maria Wingard here on pjnet.tv. Wasn't that good? Well, it was. And as good as that was, we're not going to stop with that. In just a few moments, at the bottom of the hour, Casper Stockham will be joining us. I've got to kind of get things ready for him. While I'm doing that, I ask you to ask yourself a couple of questions that I ask myself frequently, and it's helped me, so I'm going to share it with you. Here's the first question. What is the boldest thing that you've ever done in the kingdom of Christ? Now, for some people, just being obedient when God says quit your job, that's a pretty bold move. But whatever yours is, here's the second question. How long ago was that? And the challenge is to never be satisfied with either answer.